Hello and welcome everybody to the THWACK Livecast, our first one of 2022, where this is all about asking the product experts. A little bit of kind of handiwork out of the way first. So everyone who posed a question in the past couple weeks after you signed up, excuse me, we're going to be answering those questions. And then obviously we have the wonderful chatters who are going to be in the thread answering questions there. Currently, I do not have product experts in the studio with me, but I did go ahead and get their input, so I'll be answering questions on their behalf. If I don't cover all of the answers you're looking for, please call us out in the chat. I have zero problem bubbling this up to them and possibly getting answers over onto THWACK. Anything we do not answer here, we're going to go ahead and put onto THWACK and answer you there. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and dive right in. Quick recap before we go further. So if this is your first live cast with us, we did them most of the way through 2021. So we had a group about improving your network tactics, where we talked about keeping your ISPs honest and troubleshooting SaaS applications. Then we had one about IT operations and how you want to kind of, for more of a leadership and a thought perspective, where you want to take your monitoring, how you go from the absolute basics and how you work up to higher levels. And that really wasn't very product centric. It was more kind of methodology focused. So I encourage you to watch that. And then most recently, we had one about the Orion platform automation, ways you can take advantage of how the platform does automation for you. And then in addition to that, one of the ones where we kind of start digging into the API very, very lightly. There's lots and lots you can do there, but we've really just touched the very basics of it. So we're going to start off with our questions. So John asked us, there are big UX UI problems with Orion, tons of modules with older designs. Any plans to improve the UX and UI? Well, John, I've got very, very good news for you. Yes, there are plans. I have seen the plans. I cannot tell you about the plans. Sorry, this is a kind of standard disclaimer. I can't really talk about futures on this, but I will tell you that they look amazing. And this is me coming from Kevin's customer hat. So that's the one I'm wearing right now. They look really, really amazing. I'm anxious to get involved. I'm sure there will be betas, etc. available if you want to get early previews of it. We're also going to be publishing some stuff about it before it comes out. That's just how we do things here. So there are going to be changes we're going to be making, and we're going to be modernizing the UI, as you kind of implied here. It does feel dated, does feel stale in some places. I will not deny this. But one of the things we're trying to do is give everything a refresh at once so that there are no forgotten modules. So we make sure that all of the things look fresh and new for everybody. And we've been doing that with the Orion platform. But as you indicated, yeah, some of the modules didn't get as much attention. And some of that has to do with technical issues. And some of it had to do with time. We wanted to get the features out, and making them pretty was less important than getting the functionality out the door. So look forward to that. It's going to be really, really fun. If you want more information on that, I will definitely tell you to go over here, and you totally want to sign up for THWACK Camp. Hopefully I'm pointing in the right direction. Go to, not right now, you're already on my session, but when this is over, go to thwackcamp.com and sign up there. We'll be talking a lot about it in there. All right, our next question comes from, I'm not going to attempt this, I'm very sorry. When can we expect proper time zone management for environments monitoring multiple countries in different time zones? It is critical to alert, present data, and reports considering local time. I 100% agree with this, and there is a way to already do this. You can do this in the environment, and there's a couple of ways to do it. You can do it by setting up alerts that are essentially copies of other alerts, but only bound by certain times and only trigger on certain events. If you're talking about getting an event correlation time to a single time space, in other words, if you only want to report on Eastern time things, then this is where I really leverage custom properties. I used to use two custom properties, one which was the name Eastern US time or Western US time or UTC. I used to use that one, and then I also used to have one that was, it wasn't an integer, although that's our first gut check on that. It was actually a real or possibly double. I can't remember what it said. Maybe it was called decimal in the platform, but use that, and that one was called UTC offset. And I used to set that and basically have the two update each other. We talked a couple of sessions ago how you can automate setting up custom property assignment based on devices. So that way, when a device comes into your infrastructure based on its IP, based on its name, based on any number of these things, you can say, okay, cool. this doesn't have an entry for UTC offset, or it doesn't have an entry for the other, the UTC, or excuse me, the time zone name. So if it matches this, I want to put it in this one. And then you basically just copy that alert. If it matches this, then I want to put it in that one instead. It's a great way to get those updates put in everywhere. And you can also define a drop-down list on that, which is really helpful, especially if you're only working in, because I think there's something like 75 or 80 time zones around the world. If it's really helpful if you're only working in, let's say, 4 or 6 of them. It's a great way to work with that. As far as reports, they're probably gonna have to be custom reports. There's not a whole lot that can be done about that. If you're looking for date time, there is in a lot of tables and a lot of the SWCL, there is a local time field, and you can always switch things to local time using the SWCL command to local. So there's that. As far as the web side, there are some changes we could have done better. Some pages report the server time, some pages report the device time, some are based around the time of your browser, so it can be completely different from either of those. Again, this goes to the UX UI refresh we're going to be doing, so we'll be talking more about that at THWACK Camp. So please, if you have some problems with this, please let us know. I know there are a couple reports out already on THWACK that take advantage of these time zone things. I don't think we have, excuse me, did I say reports? Yeah, we have some reports that have it, but we don't have any alerts based on it. But if you need help on that, just go ahead and ask in the alert lab, and I will totally look out for it and work with you. Next up, we have Network Noob. Great name. So Network Noob asks, it's actually a request, I guess, remove the absolute tables and properties in the SQL database. They're cluttering and making it hard to understand things. Please improve the technical documentation of the database column names. What is alert ID or object ID? Nobody wants to answer these questions when asked in the THWACK community. So Network Noob, you are 100% correct, and I'm going to tell you we are probably not going to do that the way you think we are going to do that. And I say this meaning it in the nicest way possible. We're not going to give you a data dictionary because it changes every schema release. So it doesn't do us any good to build it that way, to then have to update pages and pages and pages of documentation, to then have you go back and rebuild everything yourself. What I will tell you is you should be using the API. You should be using SWCL Studio, and you should be using the API because in SWCL Studio, it's actually self-documenting. So the API self-documents on these things. In fact, let me go ahead and pop open a window, see if I can't show you a quick example of that. So I think I've got it here. Let me find it. SWCL Studio. There we go. So this is for the newer versions of SWCL Studio. I think everything, I'm going to say 2.5 and later, but that may not be 100% correct. But what this gives you is if you're looking for something specific, you can find out if, and I'm sorry, I can't make this left side bigger, but let's say you were talking about Orion, and what's the one everyone talks about? Nodes. So here's the name, the entity name. It's all down here in this little documentation block. And then if you want information on the individual things, now this one's obviously not well documented because we know what it is, but some of the other ones will give you information. The alert one is very good about what the alerts are, what kind of actions you have on those, things like that. What I'm saying is here, this stuff is incredibly well documented, and you don't necessarily need us to define it for you because it's defined in the API. We're defining it in the API as opposed to directly in SQL because the SQL infrastructure is going to change. It's changed a lot over the past several years. New tables have been added. Tables are destroyed all the time. There are temp tables that are in there and then gone. It doesn't do a lot of good building stuff around this. One of the reasons I've been so prevalent from a personal perspective is learning SWCL was because I knew the database was changing. And every time I had a report, or I used to use something like SQL reporting services, which was great until the schema changed. Then all my reports broke. It was just much easier to do this within the API. And one of the reasons we've been investing a lot of time and effort into building the API and have it self-documenting. One of the things I like most about the self-documenting features on this is if you need to call a verb and you're not really sure what you want to do with that verb, it'll tell you exactly what fields are needed. It'll also tell you whether a table can be updated through the API. It'll tell you whether or not a specific entities can be deleted via the API, and also whether you can update them. Here's a very quick little example of that. So if I just select this alert configurations one, you can see it's got a little pencil icon. Great. You can see that I can read, I can create, I can update, and I can delete. So if I have any of the entries in here and I want to delete them, I can just select it and hit delete. But I also have access to all of the verbs. So import, export, migrate. Now these migrate ones are obviously things that probably aren't going to apply to you, but import and export, and also the connecting. So this is a connection property. So you could actually do configuration dot alert object dot, and that will take you over to the alert objects entity without actually having to build a join. We can go into a lot more details on that if you want. My recommendation though is that stay away from SQL as much as you can. Let that system handle itself and do as much as you can through the API. All right, let's see. Linda M asks, what's the best or most efficient way to enable downstream dependencies for sites and device alerts? For example, if a site goes down, send the node down alert only for the WAN router and not all of its connected switches. If that WAN router comes back online, send alerts for those switches that are still down. Linda, thank you very much. You just described what we refer to as dependencies. So this is where you really want to take your time in defining what these dependencies are in your infrastructure. The environment I came from and several that people have worked with over the past have either a WAN router that has like 2 interfaces on it, or dual WAN routers, or maybe even 3, or an SD-WAN device or something in kind of that realm. And what you do is you basically build that, and that is the parent object. And then all of the child objects get grouped together and you build that parent-child relationship. What's good about that is if the parent goes down, you don't get alerts on all the children because they're inherently down because the top level one is down. If you have to do this for multiple devices, what you actually do is build 2 groups, one that would be the parent level group and then a child level group, and then you link them that way. I will say you still may get the occasional red herring based on polling cycles. So if your group status is updated every, 20 minutes, but you're polling the nodes every 10 minutes, there's a chance things in the child level could go down and we don't know about it until the next time the group level gets polled. It's totally fine. Just take your time and try this in a site or 2, specifically ones that you have coming up on maintenance. Because if you have something where you've got to do some WAN or edge work, then you can put all of their devices in, not necessarily in unmanaged mode, but just put them in mute, which will actually stop the alerting. So you can actually see what's happening at the time. And when you see that top level go down, the child object should shift, instead of being to a down status, to something that's referred to as unreachable. So we know that, well, we can't get to them because the WAN router and that branch is down. I will warn you, there's some logical ways you're going to have to think about this for things that are from your data center to a far data center. And I know a lot of people have done this with full, words failing Kevin, leaf and branch setups, where they'll say both of these switches need to be out, and then all 4 of these distribution layers, and oh, by the way, these 2 core switches need to be out. There's a lot of great things you can do with dependencies, not just linking applications and databases. Think about it for your network infrastructure and your child items. It's also a great way to use custom properties as well. So you can say, hey, I want a custom property that says, East Coast internal. And anything that is an East Coast internal automatically gets added to this group, and that group is a child of East Coast WAN routers. That way, if something comes in, perfect. It automatically gets lumped in there. You won't go to those red herring type alerts. All right, let's see. What else do we have here? So Ravi's asking, machine learning and artificial intelligence are now getting commonplace. We need to see the Orion platform use the technologies for proactive monitoring, troubleshooting, automation. Is there something on these lines that will see the light of day in the near future? I'm going to go back to the very first question. Yes, we've already seen this. We are already using machine learning right now for database performance analyzer, which pulls out your anomaly detection based on variances and statistics and math things that are well beyond my mind. Statistics, I just don't get. I leave that to the smarter people and the data scientists. Let them do it. What I will say is event correlation, determining causality, figuring out why alerts are triggering at certain times. Are there alerts that are related without actually technically being like related in the Orion system? All things we are looking at. And pulling all this stuff together is really what we're talking about on our new platform. I cannot speak to more specifics right now because it's not available for release or even early release. We are going to be talking about it and probably showing some behind the scenes stuff at THWACK Camp, so please take the time to sign up for that because we want to be able to answer these questions. Yes, we are aware that these are things that are coming down the pike, and yes, we are going to take advantage of them. Thank you for the question, Robbie. All right, Matthew JM says, will the not so new manage entities page have the same features as the old one? We still can't edit interface from this page. We can't manage volume from this page. Yeah. I will preface this by saying I'm not on the Orion platform team. I will say that I am experiencing the same problems you are. I have ended up going back to the original manage nodes as opposed to the manage entities page because it's missing these particular layers that I felt I needed to do my job more efficiently, even when I'm just sharing stuff with the public. And for me, I've given this feedback to the UX team. I've given it to the products team. Obviously, everyone on the community has upvoted these kinds of things. And yes, we need to do refreshes on this, also technology level refreshes on them. So we're not constantly polling the device when we say list resources, or we can identify things that are orphan flagged, like if a device ID or if an interface ID or a volume ID or something changes, so we can make sure we kind of skip past those. We don't need that every single time. So we're doing some technology changes. Again, coming soon, can't speak to future specifically. Please sign up for THWACK Camp. It's where we can actually talk about this stuff. So please, please, please come sign up to THWACK Camp. There will be a chat just like there is today, and we will continue on. If I didn't mention earlier, there's going to be a survey coming out at some point. We would like you to take that survey and let us know what you want in our additional live casts going forward. This is kind of, we do this not for ourselves. We do this to help the community, and we want to know what you want in these kind of sessions, whether that is a deep dive in the API, whether that is how to set up a system from scratch, or what do you think the best practices are, or what are some horrible, horrible stories you've heard from the field and how you got them fixed. I'm just throwing ideas out there. We want to know what you want to see here so we can continue to answer the questions, hopefully for everyone in the community. Also, these questions were put in advance using the link that was in your event registration. So thank you for those. When I get to the end of these questions, then we'll go back to the ones that are coming in live chat, presuming they weren't already answered by someone else helping me in the live chat. Network noob comes back again. Unique reference or unique ID for every alert. Are there any ideas for an alert that uniquely identifies each alert so that I can store the ID and fetch the same alert in the future for investigation? If there are a combination of IDs that can be used to form a unique ID will also be helpful. This again, through the API. Let me see if I can find it real fast, because I know it's in here. So it's under Orion, and it's under, not configurations. Here's the alerts active. Oh, here we go. Alert history. There you go. There's your two keys. Alert history ID and alert object ID. There you go. That's the pair you use to look up the history on those. Now, obviously, your system will not keep alert history indefinitely, but you should be able to tweak that a little bit in your threshold settings and say, yeah, I'd like to keep 120 days of triggered alerts or something like that. All right. Moving on. Punk Bunk, great name. Is it possible to log in with the SAML account to Orion SDK now? I remember it was not possible for 2020.2.1 to use SAML in Python scripts. So I'm going to be completely honest on this. I don't believe it is available yet. Most people, and I say this knowing that not every environment is going to be the same, but most people set up like a utility server that sits in the infrastructure somewhere near their Orion server, and they use an Orion local account that has obviously many rights, but is also highly tracked in the audit logs. So you can use basically just the Orion authentication username password combo. It is encrypted as long as you're talking over it's encrypted all the time because we talk over a secure channel, so you don't have to worry about any type of man-in-the-middle stuff. But that being said, I don't think we have SAML authentication in the Python scripts. The best place to check on that is on the GitHub. So you can go to github.com/SolarWinds, and in there you should find the Orion SDK. And within the SDK, there is an area for issues, and you can have some conversation in there. This may have already started in there. I believe there's one either for this or AD authentication in a similar way. If that is the case, then just jump onto that thread. Maybe it's already been resolved in a newer revision, and I just don't know. Right now, the version that I'm running is 2020.2.6 with a couple of hot fixes, which is the current most recent one. Not 100% sure if it's fixed in there for two reasons. Number one, I have it really hard to build SAML authentication in a lab environment that's really locked off from the outside world. And number two, I don't know Python. I just don't know Python, so I've got no way to even check that out for you. Sorry about that. But if this is not answered here, or you don't find something on GitHub, please go to the Orion platform and go to the SDK forum and ask the question there, because that's where our product managers obviously watch that all the time, and we want to make sure we get the answer, we get all the questions answered from this session and all other sessions, really, whether or not you've joined us on a livecast or not. So put that question on THWACK if you can't find your stuff on GitHub. All right, Jason Fuller, let's see. Jason says, I'm trying to make a modern dashboard, but everything looks like it's wrapped in SWCL. Is there a document that references how the data is structured? Yes and no. There is not a document. There is the SWCL Studio, which pulls the API information out. Now, that being said, if you want to build a modern dashboard literally from scratch, you don't actually need to use SWCL. If you select table or chart or any of those or KPI widgets, there's actually a builder in there. You can actually go to edit your data source and select individual things and then preview them and save them. Because a lot of the people that are been working with the platform for an experienced amount of time are used to using SWCL, including myself, that's generally my go-to, but you do not have to build it that way. But it does bring us to an interesting point that I should jump over to. So let me see here. So if I get me a new THWACK, if I go to THWACK, if you're not aware of this, we have actually gone and built new content exchanges. So here we have under Orion Platform, modern dashboards. So what you can do with these dashboards is just find one that works for you. Let's see, here's a team summary dashboard that JM sysadmin put in, and be like, nope, I really like this one. There's the data. This is roughly what it looks like. Cool. You can just download that and then import it. Now, as far as importing it, this is a JSON file. You have to import it through the API. So you would actually go into the API. It's Orion dashboards, except I'm not finding it because I'm not looking in the right space. Am I? No, because it's at the parent level. Pardon me as I scroll. Orion dashboards instance, and there's a verb here, import. You can just select invoke. So all you have to do is, we'll wait for this to load, is open that JSON, linearize it, and all that means is get rid of all of the carriage returns in it. Pretty easy. Most common text editing tools have it. I've used Notepad++, but you can use whatever your current flavor is, and then you can just paste it right in here and then hit invoke, and boom, you've imported that dashboard. If you don't want to go through those steps, there's also a PowerShell way to do this where it basically calls the same thing, but you don't have to linearize it. There is a discussion about that on the forum. So if I jump back here to modern dashboards, here's how to import modern dashboards, and here's how to import and export modern dashboards. This one is a THWACK article where we go over how to do it in PowerShell, and this one is the support pages that tells you how to basically do the linearization portion. It's pretty easy. It's actually a great way to learn SWCL because you can get 80% of what you're looking for. You can make your management happy, you can make your team happy, and you can kind of be like, all right, that's good enough for today. And then you can actually look at the SWCL, paste it into the SWCL Studio, and see how those connections work. Also, if you have a buddy who's a DBA, totally good time to ask him or her how they would structure information. Yes, it's basically under the hood, it's all SQL Server, but this abstraction layer on top handles that we talked to, the SolarWinds information service, handles most of the calls in a very SQL-like way. And one of the reasons we call it SWCL. And so some of the logic might be there, whether or not you want to use a subquery for a selection, or whether you want to do groupings, or whether you want to use a having clause here instead of a where clause over there. Optimizations there can help. And realistically, if you give them basically a screen cap of what the table looks like, or as it's actually referred to in the API, an entity, they'll be able to help you work through that. Honestly, it's how I learned, because I fake being a DBA. I am a DBA only on screen and only for acting purposes. All right, what else we got here? K. Cohen asks, we are dealing with too many alerts and people are ignoring them. Is there a best practices for how to set up alerting in Orion? Kay, thanks for the question. The problem with this is yes and no. There are best practices from the field, and there are best practices from a technical side, and then there's best practices for your organization, and they are distinct. For me, I turned down the frequency in which I checked for alerts. I don't necessarily need to know every 60 seconds whether a process spiked up to 80%. I don't care. For me, it was more like I care if it goes over 98% and stays there for, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, then I care about that alert. These are the kind of questions you have to ask yourself. As far as having too many alerts, I will pose the question to you on this, and if you happen to be in the chat, please answer. Are you using the out-of-the-box alerts? Actually, that's a good question. I'm going to ask everyone in chat. How many people in chat just give me like a thumbs up or a Y or something if you're using the out-of-the-box alerts with zero customization, just turned on, because I'm just curious. Okay. So that's speaking volumes. I will tell you my best practice for this: turn them all off. I will 100% say this. I'm pretty sure the other professionals on the call agree with me. The out-of-the-box alerts are built there as examples. They show you very specific scenarios so you can see how an alert works, how you alert on a storage array, how you alert on a LUN, how you alert on a virtual machine versus a virtual host. They're there as frameworks. They are not there to be used in production. Can they? Yeah, of course. One of my favorite ones is node rebooted. I don't necessarily need to attach an email to it, but just kind of keeping a track of that and putting it into the event log. I like that capability. Just something nice to have in case anyone asks about it. But for alerts, I would say there's a couple of schools of thought, and you should go back to previous THWACK camp sessions. Leon and I have talked about it. Crystal has talked about alerts. Everyone talked about alerts because it's something we're all very passionate about, because alerts are important. But if people have an Outlook rule that automatically deletes them, you've already lost. They're never going to care about an alert again. It's just noise. So cutting down on the number of alerts while also upticking the type of data you put into an alert to make it more informational is really that happy balance. And one of the things that I've told people is maybe once a quarter or once a month, you really need to take the time to go to the teams that are receiving these alerts and be like, are these valuable? What more information do you need? Are they triggering for the proper scenarios? If you have that little conversation, which, yeah, I understand it's pain, it's one more thing you've got to do with your day, but it's really worthwhile, because then they're going to stop ignoring the alerts because you're taking the time to tune them for them. Same goes for dashboards. Same goes for reports. Crystal and I will be talking more about, I believe we're calling it the notification decision tree at THWACK camp this year, where we discuss when you should use a report, when you should use a dashboard, when you should use an alert. And there's a lot of scenarios built around that. A phrase one of my favorite people used to say all the time was, this platform is great. It gives you plenty of spaces to talk about things, but you need to salt it to taste. And for me, that was really one of the big pushes when I've worked with the product, when I work with larger customers, when I work with people that are experience alert fatigue. I've often gone to them and say, this is great, but you really need to turn most of these off, and you really need to get yourself a dev system so you can plan an alert, play with an alert, see what it looks like at the far end, send it to yourself, and then just basically export it from your dev system, import it into your production system, and then turn it on. All right, where are we at? Okay, so Tom Bennard says, we've got NPM and SAM and are using some of the templates for Windows servers. Cool. I understand the process, service monitors, and process monitors. Okay, service monitors and perf counters. But I'm having the worst time understanding the scripts monitors. PowerShell in my case. Oh, Tom. Oh, Tom, you made me so happy by asking this. Okay, so couple things you need to know about. It's not just PowerShell. It's any of the script templates that you can use. So it PowerShell, Python, Perl. You can do Go in there. I think there's a way to get those set up. Long story short, the way you want to do these things is you have to think about two things that have to be in every one of these alerts, or every one of these templates or these components. The first one is an exit code. So the exit code is a number 1 through 4 that determines the status of the overall components. So if you were looking at a file folder and if it's over something, you need to trigger this. That's what that is. That is published on THWACK, and I will show an example. And the other thing is you have to output at least one statistic, and that statistics needs to be output legitimately with the word statistic followed by a colon. Now, the other thing you can do is you can add messages optional. So the very simplest output from a PowerShell one, I'm going to use PowerShell, would be write host, double quotes, statistic, colon, 0, double quotes, new line, write host, quotes, message, colon, whatever message you want there, close quotes, enter, exit, 0. That's the minimum. Sends an exit code, gives a message, gives a statistic. But I want to tell you, you need to kind of think about this a little more. And I was able to dig up an example, and I want to show that real fast. So hopefully everyone can see this. I'm doing it in Visual Studio Code, and I have zoomed in quite a bit here. So there are a bunch of things here. So when I talked about exit codes, this is the way I wrote it. Oh, wow, this is definitely a copy and paste. So this is how I do it. You can just commit these numbers to memory if you want, or constantly look them up. I just decided to build it into this element that's called a hash table. So all the way at the end, I can say, basically assign a language exit state, and then just do exit with the exit code from the exit state. It's called a hash table. You can do it a number of different ways. You can also just do exit 0 or exit 1 or exit 2 or 3 or 4. Any of those work fine. If you notice on the scripts, and I want to have this here. So if we've got this here, you notice we have these script arguments. Those get pulled in here by pulling args, whatever. So this is args 0, which means the first argument, in this case, the only argument, which is h-v. And then we do a thing. So for me, we're doing a test. We're getting accounts. We're figuring out some sizes. But the important part is here. If you notice, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got 7 pair of statistics, essentially. So I've got a message about the parent age. I've got a statistic, a numerical value about the folder age. I've got one for a folder count, file count, folder size, newest file, oldest file, etc., etc. This is the way you want to build your PowerShell scripts. This one, if it's not on THWACK, I'll make sure I put it on THWACK. It's something I threw together for someone on the community last year or the year before. It was just a way to kind of take a quick inventory of a folder size, and then I took it and went a little too far with it. I also went very deep and put in lots of comments so you understand what I'm doing. So I'll link to that when we're done here in the show notes. But the real big part about this is you can return up to 10 of these pairs of data. And that's really helpful if someone asks something like this actually came out. Someone's like, I wanted to know the folder size of this thing. It's like, okay, great. But they didn't ask about any of the other stuff. They didn't want to know if it was newly created. They didn't want to know if the newest one was 10 days old or something like that. And I said, if you're going to get information, you've got to essentially make this call out to a scripting engine anyway. Why not get a lot more information back? What's nice about these is they all come in under one component. So if you notice, when I go back after I run this for the first time, I'm just going to go ahead and shrink this again. They each come back in these script outputs. So here's script output 1, parent age, and I can change the display name. And each of these individual ones, you can actually set a warning and a critical threshold for. Now, if you have them, like I do here, to not set, that's fine. What the not set means is they're never going to trigger anything that watches for a component status. And maybe it's just for record keeping. That's cool. Not a problem. But you can also say, hey, if this number is ever not 0, that's critical, and I need to know. So if you flag it critical here, of course, that can be registered up into your alerts, whether you want to filter your alerts specifically for this thing or have a general when a component goes into a critical state message. Either way works. I should say the same thing applies for Python Perl. Basically, all the major scripting languages, they need this kind of output. That's what the Orion platform is looking to grab and pull back out, and that's what we enumerate over. So there are a lot of examples of this already in the community forum. So you can just go up to, you can just go up here to the Content Exchange, Server and Application Monitor, and Application Mouse Work, Application Monitor templates. There's a bunch in there that are already using scripting languages, so you can just pull down a couple examples, import them in your environment. You don't have to assign them to anything, but then you can see what they look like, and most of the people have included screenshots, so you see what the output also looks like. All right, jumping back. Thank you, Tom. That's a really good question, and if you have further questions on that, you can see me in the SAM forum. I'm more than happy to answer those questions. BM Online asks, a recent upgrade to our Isilon from 1FS8220 to 9.1 has broken our connection to the devices in SRM. When can we expect an update to SRM to support newer versions of EMC Isilon? I am not the PM for the SRM tool. I would say this is probably something we will be handling in the next release. I do not have the timeline. The one question I have is, I thought I already saw a feature request for this when we had people who were early adopters. So let's see. If you're not familiar with feature requests, I'm going to give you the crash course. You go to THWACK, then you go, in this case, it would be Systems Management, Storage Resource Monitor, and you can go here to feature requests. And then these are all those feature requests. So what was that, an Isilon? Let's see, those are really old ones that have already been closed. So ideas, it doesn't look like anyone put one in for the recent versions. So that would be my first thing. I would have put in a feature request for Isilon and put in some information here that it was for the 9.1 version. And if at all possible, give some screenshots of what the output looks like. That just kind of helps, or what you would like it to look like. It's one of the ways our product managers make sure that we build something that meets your needs instead of what they think your needs might be based on some words. Screenshots are actually really, really helpful for feature requests, even if you got to do a quick mock-up. Totally worth the time. All right, jumping back. So BM Online, if it's not in the very near future, I will reach out to the product manager. You should probably ask the question on the forum. There is actually a link somewhere that lists all the current versions of the hardware overviews, or excuse me, this is the provider information, lists the provider information broken down by vendor and has that information in there. If you don't see it there and it's not listed in our what we're working on page, then I would definitely put it in the forum, because I think we need to definitely get that addressed. I would feel it would be short term, but I'm not the PM for it, but we can ask for you. Saul asks, Saul 10, excuse me, is there any hope that the API capabilities of SAM will be added to NPM? I assume you're talking about API capabilities insofar as the API pollers, and Saul 10, if I am incorrect in here, please let me know. As far as the API pollers, I'm assuming you want to do stuff like talk to Ubiquiti equipment or to your SD-WAN devices or something like that. I can't speak to futures. I've said this before. However, we will be having discussions in this general arena, maybe not this exact question at THWACK Camp. You should be asking this question on NPM. Honestly, this should be in the NPM forum so the NPM product manager can address it directly. If this is not in there as a feature request, please put it in there. I will totally upvote it, because those two products are the ones that communicate with the most endpoint devices in my mind, and that, for me, that functionality needs to exist on either side. So it needs to technically be part of the Orion platform and just gets leveraged by the network performance monitor or the server and application monitor. All right. Fred Helm is asking, I am currently using DBA Express 2021.8.0, and I was expecting to find a link to check for upgrades, but cannot find such a link. I know it's a free tool, and I'm wondering if I have the latest version and how to get updates. Okay, Fred, I actually had to go back to the product team for this because I was also under that, under the impression that that's where you would find that information. Turns out it's not there. Because it is a free tool, they elected to do it a slightly different way. 601F does in the other. And for them, it went into, tell me I didn't lose it. For them, it went into, wrong way. There we go. Sorry guys, first day using a computer. It actually, the easiest way to find out is your release notes. So if you go to the DBA Express release notes, which there should be a link in the help page, or it'll take you to the parent level and then you can just find the release notes. Basically just check here for your versions. It looks like you're on 2021.8 as of June of this year. That is the most recent version. This will be updated. This link may eventually change to a SolarWinds.com page. If that's the case, we will automatically put a redirect in here to send you over. If you realize you're not on the version you want, just click here. Go to the DBA Express products page to learn more and then download. And that is all the questions we had from people in advance. So if I have not said it, I'm going to say it again. You should be registering for THWACK Camp. Take the time, register for THWACK Camp. Takes a couple minutes of your days, and you can start building out your agenda now. I'll be presenting in a couple of sessions there. The head geeks will be presenting in a couple of sessions there. We will have discussions from our product strategy teams. We'll have discussions from pretty much everybody, customers, industry leaders, all that kind of stuff. So THWACK Camp, again, 100% free event. There will be prizes. So you just get prizes for attending, but more importantly, you'll be able to have conversations that aren't necessarily about exactly what's being seen in the sessions. So you can actually have a conversation about, hey, I have this problem with Meraki and devices. Oh, well, which ones? And someone else will be like, oh, here's how I fixed that. It's a way to network together and make sure that everyone in this community is powerful, because I've said it before, all of us are smarter and probably infinitely smarter than any one of us. Being able to handle these things and do support in a community way is one of the reasons I fell in love with the SolarWinds platform, is because it's a lot of things that I can get solutions to that I'm not necessarily getting directly from a SolarWinds individual, but what I'm doing is I'm getting information from people actually using the solutions. And for me, that made a difference. All right, that is the end of what I have here. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to a little chat. All right, so someone asked if there was a way to, let's see, MI Hub Andre Showman asked if there's a way to change the output data on Orion maps. And as of currently, there is not. You talked about like a size issue where you just have bytes in there. Currently, there's not a way to do that. This is something where we didn't, where it may have been an oversight by the product team. This is where you definitely want to go in and put in a feature request for this one, because it is an Orion platform level thing. Go to the Orion platform forum, and then go to feature requests. Put in there a screenshot. You can say, we talked about it here on the session, 100% perfect. That's exactly what we want to see. And then everyone who's on this session that wants something like this, go ahead and upvote that one. All right. Looks like PP2 from Singapore. Crystal, did we already answer that one? Looks like we've already answered a bunch. So I have no questions sitting out there. So that's it. I answered all the questions I can that came in from before. It looks like we're answering a bunch of the questions in the chat. I don't know that there's any need for Kevin to just keep talking. Maybe I should just say, forget it. Let's go ahead and jump in and see if anyone put in some last minute questions. So, time zone management. You got it. Way. All right, so there. Possible login. It looks like we've answered pretty much everything. So that's it. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank everyone for being a part of this. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on THWACK. I think we'll keep the chat open for the time being, but you don't need to see me on camera to get your answers. So we'll keep the chat open. We'll respond to your questions. And I look forward to seeing you everyone at THWACK Camp. Thanks so much for joining us today.